The world is getting crazier. People are acting more and more insane. The end of the world is tomorrow. Tomorrow. There's only one thing to do when the world is falling apart. Listen to Basil and Gonz as they discuss this week's news and events through the lens of Bible prophecy. You are listening to Canary Cry News Talk.
You are listening to Canary Cry News Talk. It is October 20th, 2025. This is episode number 885. We're seeing a MERICAN meltdown, everybody. My name is Gonz, at Face Like the Sun, director of the Age of Deceit films, your favorite agent provocateur for Christ, live to tape from the metaverse to bring you the best news, which is the gospel message of Jesus Christ, while reporting the egregious with a well-rounded, biblically grounded take on world events. I am here solo once again. Basil is still out, but I will hold it down on this Monday.
Gary, what day is it? Monday.
It is Monday, and it is National Sasquatch Awareness Day. So raise your awareness about the Sasquatch, everybody. I do believe that this is some kind of Nephilim-esque creature. A lot of reports about supernatural types of encounters with the Sasquatch. I think a lot of maybe the footage we've seen over the years is kind of a hoax, a guy in a big suit or something like that. But the real thing, maybe there's more to it, and maybe there's more biblical explanations than people are familiar with or aware of. So there you go. Ask someone that knows about the Sasquatch and get edified on all of the angles there. We did an interview, I forget who it was with, but a long time ago we did a full Bigfoot episode on Canary Cry Radio. You can go check that out. Just go look for the Canary Cry Radio feed. And also just published last Wednesday, because I did not go live, we still did publish an episode. It was Burning Man 2025 Part 1. So looking forward to seeing the feedback, the response from everybody. So far, it's been pretty good. But I want to know your thoughts. It's the episode where we, of course, annually we document what goes on at Burning Man. Boots on the ground. Basil is there. Our friend Carl Tykrib is there with the Camp of the Unknown God. And every year, we do a good job. I say we because I feel like I'm a part of it, even though I'm not actually in Black Rock Desert. I'm sitting in the ivory tower over here. They feed me the data with the footage and the audio clips and everything, and I get to go through it all and piece things together for an episode. But this year was especially compelling because of some of the audio that was caught. You can go to burningmanresearch.com to get all of the past episodes we've done over the years. I think for the last 7 or 8 years in terms of actually going to Burning Man, but also several episodes before that with Carl, with others interviewing about transformative events and things of that nature that really shape culture, or attempt to shape culture, as maybe some of the believers going there, preaching the good word and, praying for others and spreading the gospel, they may have had something to do with stopping some agendas, things of that nature. But, those are things that we may not be able to quantify entirely. All I know is that we go every year and we're able to capture lots of things that are being prepared for culture. And this year was a little bit different because, of course, there are always great conversations with people who are part of the Camp of the Unknown God, and that's part of the cool thing is you get to hear the reports annually, hear back from them, what was different about this year, things of that nature. But they were able to capture a moment, or Basil was anyway, with his recorder, a man who went to or came to a Bible study that Carl and the Camp of the Unknown God was holding. And this individual was absolutely tripping on acid. And he was confronted with the gospel. And it was a very interesting display of truly the inner struggle of all of us. I say that in the sense that everybody has a choice to make when it comes to following Jesus or not. And a lot of things that reflect a transformed mind and transformed heart, those are things that they're just decisions that we make every day, right? We wake up and we can choose to do this or choose to do that or choose not to do this or choose not to do that. And those types of decisions are what reflect or are the fruit, really, to a renewed mind and a renewed heart, being born again. But the temptations, the struggle, it's still there. That doesn't disappear all of a sudden because you're saved or you're baptized or something. You simply have a different outlook, that a more eternal outlook that assists you and molds you to overcome those temptations. And so I say all this because we were all privileged as an audience to listen in on this internal struggle of this individual who was at Burning Man, high on acid and being confronted with the gospel. And you can tell he had his own agenda of why he was there. Plenty of people just go there to party and have a good time and whatever. And that sounded like that was this individual, that he was there. He had an agenda. But of course, he ran into the camp of the unknown God. Apparently they had met him a year before, so this wasn't somebody completely brand new. They were somewhat familiar with the camp of the unknown God. So a little bit of history, but goes to show that some gardens take a little bit longer to tend, and it takes a little while before you see anything sprout. So I think just capturing the audio was compelling enough for everybody to go check out. So go listen to it. It's also on the Canary Cry News Talk feed. So if you're listening to this on the Canary Cry News Talk feed, just go one episode back. You'll see it there. Canary Cry Radio episode 185, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And it's Burning Man Part 1 for 2025. And we'll bring a second episode with more interviews and conversations that were captured. But I wanted to document that. And also there was another very interesting Bible study about the supernatural that's also included in Part 1 there. And it's capped off with a nice rant by Basil in the Bible study that really, it's just one of those moments where you got to say, all right, good job, Basil. Nice work in, representing the Canarium there. And delivering some insight and some knowledge, but also doing it in the context of a Burning Man Bible study, which is unusual, but also very, very much in play. Like, it's funny because from the outside world, if you're just like a cultural Christian, you'd think like, wait a minute, Christians going to Burning Man, Christians walking into the heart of pagan activities. Like, what are you doing? But ultimately, you hear the experiences, you talk to the people that are there every year, and it's almost like it's more bold to walk into Burning Man with the gospel than it is to walk into church on Sunday, just hearing the word. And there's nothing against that. I'm saying that, in terms of evangelism, there's something extremely bold about walking into enemy territory and letting yourself be known that you are there to represent the kingdom of heaven. So anyway, that just wanted to let everyone know. Go check that out. Canary Cry Radio, episode number 185. I keep saying 185, but I don't know. It might be 188. Oh no. How do I not have this pulled up? I have problems, folks. This is just an embarrassment sometimes. All right. Canary Cry Radio, episode 188. There you go. See, good thing I checked, just so you guys are all aware. It's titled Tripping on Jesus, Burning Man 2025, Part 1, Canary Cry Radio, episode 188. So there you go. Go check that out when you get a chance. Again, we'll put together Part 2, and that'll be coming out in the next few weeks as well. So there we go. There's that. Let's see. Basil's still traveling through time and space. He will return at some point. I don't know if he's capturing anything where he's at and what he's doing, but he's doing his annual little travels. So that is that, and let's dive into it. There's a lot going on in the world. I feel that the descent of America is somewhat palpable, but not, it's funny because it seems like most people know that stuff is wrong and that, we got to call this out, we got to call that out, but there's not a whole lot of tangible change really taking place. There's different things moving with the economy, with the markets and things of that nature. But when it comes to your day-to-day living of most Americans, I don't know that a whole lot has changed other than a continued downward spiral of of just, the money becoming worth less and less, meaning things get more expensive. Different states and well, I guess it depends on where you are in the country. There's different state laws and stuff, and different states are moving differently. But overall, it just seems like the psychological operation to desensitize us is really hitting a new peak. And I'll get into everything, but of course, we have to start off with what was breaking today. It's the ultimate cyber pandemic.
The COVID-19 crisis would be seen as a small disturbance in comparison to a major cyber pandemic.
Cyber pandemic. Breaking Amazon Web Services, that's AWS. A massive AWS outage early this morning sent major websites and apps down for several hours. Tracking site down detectors received over 8 million reports around the globe. And you're talking Snapchat, obviously AWS, Amazon, Venmo, Reddit, Roblox. Oh no, what will the children do? Pinterest, FanDuel, Robinhood. Let's see, what else? We got Apple Music, the Navy Federal Credit Union. That's not a good sign. T-Mobile, Zoom, Adobe Creative Cloud. That's not a good sign for me. I use Adobe. That's not great. AT&T, ClassLink, College Board, Amazon Alexa, and so on. So this is something that if you're in crypto, if you're in Web3, this has been like a talking point for a long time that, hey, centralized servers is not the way to go, because one company like AWS can have problems and your entire infrastructure, all of these businesses, New York Times is in here too, all of these businesses and different platforms and applications, they will suffer. They'll have downtime, they'll have issues. And I don't know, I can't think of a more clear example of, here we go, like Amazon Web Services has an issue, and a bunch of services that people rely on daily to do their thing, whether in business or entrepreneurship or their corporation or whatever it might be, or their school. They all use these products. Oh, Microsoft is on this list too. Just good old Microsoft, just all of Microsoft being built on AWS. It's an issue. A single point of failure is the problem that a lot of folks who talk about decentralization have been pointing out, is that, hey, if all power is consolidated into one place, if all the data is being basically centralized and distributed in one location or one company, if that company goes down, there is no resilience. It goes down, you're done. You're going to have to rebuild it, or hopefully you had a backup of the data or something to salvage that information and all that infrastructure. But it is a real thing. And what I find interesting is that we are at this precipice right now where we're moving into Web3 rails, Web3 infrastructure, and it's happening rapidly. Well, I wouldn't say rapidly. It's happening slowly but surely, I would say, because with the way the amount of change that Web3 and crypto and blockchain, it takes a while. It takes a crisis really for everyone to get on board with new technology when it comes to this type of stuff, because the old way works and it's a little bit faster. But you exchange a little bit of that speed and convenience for security. So there's always this balance, and this is well known amidst crypto enthusiasts, is that there's only certain things you can do. You can either go really hard on security, or you can go a lot harder on speed and user experience and stuff like that. So the faster things work and the more smooth it is, sometimes you're compromising security, you're compromising the back end for that. And on the flip side, if you're going to be really robust and secure and all that kind of stuff, the whole thing might be kind of slow. That's kind of how Bitcoin is with blockchain. you want to send somebody some Bitcoin, I mean, it's fairly quick. It's faster than trying to send it through your traditional wires and stuff like that with all these middlemen and taking fees and banks and holdups and all that kind of stuff. It's faster than that, but it's not as fast as like an email or something, right? You got to wait every 10 minutes. There's a block. So you got to wait minimum 10 minutes, sometimes longer if your transaction isn't being picked up by the network right away. So it could take a half hour or something like that. And that could be nerve wracking. But that's a feature. That's not an issue with something like Bitcoin because the network is so secure. It is the largest computer network in the world. Most people don't realize that, but truly it's a decentralized network that is all over the world that it's very difficult to take down. But I do want to make this point because it is rooted in scripture. Okay, you might think, what are you talking about, Gonz? You're talking about crypto, you're talking about scripture. What are you talking about? Well, when it comes to decentralization, the idea of decentralization, it's pretty straightforward, right? Decentralize. You have centralized, which is, single point of consolidation, authoritarianism and totalitarianism. A lot of it comes down to centralized power and authority. And of course, when we think about spiritual things in that context, when you believe in God, God is that central figure. There is nothing other than God. God is the Father, well, depending on what religion you are, but in Christianity, God is the creator. He transcends time and space. He is the Alpha and the Omega. And so he is that central point of authority. But in the world, this fallen, broken world, that message of God has survived centuries, really, and through different challenges, and it could have easily been rooted out, but it hasn't. And part of it is because of decentralization. Historically, I'm going to mention Romans 12 here. Starting in verse 2, it says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what is good, pleasing, and perfect will of God." Verse 3, "For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourselves more highly than you ought, but think of yourselves with sober judgment according to the measure of faith God has given you." Verse 4, "Just as each of us has one body with many members, and not all members have the same function, so in Christ we who are many are one body, and each member belongs to one another." So I know, very popular passage. If you've been a Christian for a while, you know about this passage about, hey, and it goes into the gifts and stuff afterwards. So, hey, we're one church under Christ, but we're all different members. Each of us have different functions. Some of us are the toes and some of us are fingers, and everybody has a role in this kingdom of God. Well, that, in a sense, if you look at it practically or quantifiably, is decentralization. You think about the early church, and again, it could have the message of Christ rising from the dead could have easily been stamped out. If the Roman authorities really wanted to crack down, it could have probably been done. But the fact that so many people were picking up that message, preserving it, and delivering it to others, they couldn't hold it down from one spot or one person, martyring one guy, killing Philip or whoever, just murdering people by the hordes even, could not stop the gospel message. That is a true, real-life example of the power of decentralization. And I think the church, really, truly, if you think about how the gospel was able to supernaturally, I would argue, remain in the forefront of culture and society, despite especially the early years, is number one, an act of God, but in the sort of practical sense or the quantifiable sense, was true decentralization at work. Now, part of the interesting thing about blockchains is that every node on the network has a copy of the entire ledger of Bitcoin. So there can be 20,000 different nodes all across the world, and each node has the record, a consistent, it's called a consensus, but it's the same ledger as all other nodes on that network. And if they don't agree to the ledger, then they can't really participate in the network. So if you take down 19,999 nodes, and you got one node left. If that one node gets preserved, then the entire network survives, and they can rebuild from that one node. It's very similar to fractals and hologram theory, where in a hologram, you can get a single piece or slice of something, and in that slice contains the information of the whole. You know, all of the information for the entire piece is contained within that fraction. And it's very similar with blockchains, is that, you know, again, everybody or every node has a copy of the entire ledger. So you got to basically wipe out everything if you're going to wipe out that network. And similarly with the church, again, each person who carries this gospel message had something, that this truth that was that transcends, and they were able to. It's a simple message. You know, in that time, it wasn't a document. It wasn't like necessarily the Bible as we have it today. Maybe it was some scrolls or whatever, but a lot of it was word of mouth. And so it was truly something just in the mind. It was an idea. And, you know, you've heard the phrase, like, you can't kill an idea. And this is true. But in terms of something that is consequential to the eternity of your soul, I think it's pretty important for humanity to at least hear about it. And it looks like God has preserved a way for that to take place for centuries, for millennia. And at some point, there will be rest. There will be a return of Jesus Christ and millennial reign and all that kind of stuff. The Sabbath is coming to creation at some point. But in the meantime, we got to continue to do the will of God, which is love God and love others as yourself. Love your neighbor. Spread the good news. Be part of the Great Commission. What are you doing for that process? And yeah, so, you know, I know I went into the Bible stuff as part of this conversation with AWS going down. So we went from AWS to crypto to the Bible, you know, only on Canary Cry News Talk here. But yes, just getting back to the AWS thing, it's truly an example of how fragile our entire digital cyber ecosystem is. And Klaus Schwab, when he warned about the cyber pandemic, look, say what you want about Klaus Schwab, Mr. Evil Man himself, but he wasn't lying when he said that COVID-19 crisis would be a small disturbance compared to a cyber pandemic, because a true cyber pandemic would just create so much chaos. I mean, we already have people who can't handle themselves if, you know, they got to stay off TikTok for a day or something, you know, and now you're going to have an entire ecosystem, a cyber ecosystem go down or get hijacked or something like that. That is a recipe for absolute disaster. So keep that in mind. I do want to mention, again, you know, it's so convenient when crisis like this happens, because, as I mentioned, Web3 infrastructure is being adopted here. And in order to do so, you need a little bit of chaos in the old infrastructure. You got to show the cracks in the building to convince everybody to move to a new building or you know, move to a new supplier or new tools to build or fix that building. One thing that is imminent in the realm of crypto and the economy are altcoin ETFs. Now, we saw the Bitcoin ETF January of 2024. We've seen Bitcoin go up substantially since then in terms of dollar value. We saw the Ethereum ETF. These are electronic traded funds. Basically, it's a vehicle that Wall Street and, you know, these sort of big banks type people, they create a product that the public can invest in order to get the exposure to things like cryptocurrency without actually buying real cryptocurrency. So, you know, it is kind of like paper money in a sense. It's just like an IOU type thing, but it's all institutional, it's all legal, all this kind of stuff. And so people feel safer buying and trading ETFs rather than having the responsibility of holding their crypto by themselves, you know, sovereignly in your own hands. They don't want to deal with all that. That's kind of the more tedious side of crypto. But with AWS going down or having issues, this is a glaring advertisement for multiple blockchain cloud type services. And one of them, I'll just mention, there's only a couple that are really in the sort of competition, I guess. I suppose a new company can always come in and swoop in and take market share. But there's something called Filecoin. Filecoin's been around for a long time, and they're part of the IPFS, which is the interplanetary file sharing service. It's a decentralized type of network where you can upload your content and preserve it in a little bit more of a secure way, which is different from a centralized location, a centralized server where things are being kept traditionally. There's a couple others though, Arweave and the one I'm showing on screen here, Akash, the Akash network. These are all data cloud systems that could replace something like AWS over time, especially as businesses and different just people building digital things lose confidence in AWS or Amazon and these centralized servers. They can go to the Akash network or Filecoin or Arweave to upload their content and use it for their cloud. And again, it's going to be a while before I think it really truly takes place. But I brought up the whole ETF thing because the ETFs for a whole bunch of altcoins, including Solana and XRP and so many others. There's a list of cryptocurrencies made in America that are getting ready to receive an ETF. And it just so happens that the government shutdown has prevented the trading, the launch of these ETFs because they're waiting for the signature from the government, basically. And in the meantime, we have this AWS outage, which is kind of a glaring advertisement for some of these other cloud services. As businesses and entrepreneurs and stuff, they start to realize the problem with centralized clouds like AWS and look for other solutions that are a little bit more secure. And that's kind of where things are headed. And it's no surprise. We've been pointing this out. People in crypto have been pointing this out for a long time. Of course, I've been pointing it out to the Canary for a long time that this type of issue exists and that it's going to be part of the process of going sovereign with our data. And this is actually a quick call out. I did see an email from some folks on the Canary Tech team. This is a call out to the Canary Tech team or anybody interested to start researching, digging into some of these other decentralized cloud services, and maybe we start to systematically, submit our data when it comes to when I'm talking about the Canary data. So episodes and artwork and all that kind of stuff to some of these decentralized networks so that they get preserved and are able to exist censorship free moving into the future, or at least from what we can tell, censorship free. You never know with these things, right? It's a lot of times it's a little bit of a marketing thing to say they're totally decentralized. There's still a portion of it that is centralized to facilitate some of the transactions and the network itself. So I got to get a true tech person to look under the hood to know exactly what's going on with some of this. But it's I would say it's a little assignment for anybody in the Canary Tech team. They may already be familiar with some of this technology, but something to look into and something we should all at least get familiar with a little bit just to be ahead of the curve when it comes to this type of thing. I do wonder, like, if I really wanted to be like a consultant, like a Web3 consultant person for businesses, I could probably walk into some businesses and be like, hey, you guys are really risking your entire infrastructure by relying on one cloud service to host all your data. You might want to spread it around a little bit. So in any case, there you go. AWS having issues. I was wondering if I was going to actually have issues going live today, but clearly no issues. I'm able to go live. Great. Fantastic. X is still up. So that's, a little feather in the cap of Elon saying that, hey, all these other places are down, but X is still up. So there you go. Good stuff. All right. So let us continue and talk about some other things here. All right. Let's get into a little bit of the culture situation. And it's, I suppose it's a build back better situation.
Build back better, blah, blah, blah.
It is a blah, blah, blah. I agree. Okay. So footage coming out of Portland the last couple days, again, more violence. We don't need to dig into every little thing here. There's just a lot of tension, turmoil. There's a little bit of violence and people getting into each other's faces and all kinds of stuff going down. And I think there's plenty of conversations surrounding these moments that are captured on film that people have pointed out. A lot of conservative talk shows and alt media personalities and folks on the internet. There's enough commentary and sharing of stuff going on. So I don't want to dig into anything too much there. But there is one piece of footage that I do want to kind of highlight and mention. And, oops, a little audio thing there. And that is footage from Portland. And it's the person who shared this said, liberals in Portland spent their whole night rollerblading around in circles outside of the ICE facility. I'm convinced nobody has a job in that city. And the footage is exactly that. It's some people dressed up as different things. So one person's dressed up as Pikachu, the whole gotta catch 'em all thing, right? It's funny. The DHS posted that gotta catch 'em all meme on their X account, and just triggered a whole bunch of people who have Pokemon gear, like liberals with Pokemon gear, to start wearing their Pokemon stuff. And I don't know. The PSYOP is very, very powerful, and it works really well. But yes, this footage is just, for those of you watching, you're looking at it. Literally, it's just people with rollerblades going around in circles. And, they got lights, and it looks kind of like a little rave. And, all right. Yeah, people having a little bit of, I don't know, fun or something, protesting. I mean, it's true. I don't think many of these people necessarily have jobs, and they're holding up signs with vulgar words on it and stuff. But, I want to mention it because it's the degeneracy and the sort of downward spiral of just culture in general. We've seen this. We've been documenting it for a long time, but we're kind of at this point where the absurdity it's peaked, and then we were like, okay, can't get any more absurd. And then it just does. It just keeps getting more absurd, where maturity is gone. People are not mature necessarily. Everything's a party. Everything's a spectacle. And, I was talking to somebody very close in my family, and they have a job that is reliant on government. And so this person has not gotten paid last week or so. And so they started having opinions. And this person's opinion was, statistically speaking, historically speaking, beheadings were fantastic to get things back in order, get things back in line. And I said, oh, okay, who are we beheading? And this person said, doesn't matter, a politician, doesn't matter, just anybody. We need an example. And so I just having conversation with this person, I said, okay, well, the problem with your theory is that most of the movers and shakers in this world, the people that really pull on the levers of society, they're not necessarily out in public. If you're gonna publicly execute a politician because the people are, rising up against the corrupt system, you're literally destroying the puppet while the puppet master laughs in the background and exits the room and goes to look for another puppet to manipulate, right? So unfortunately, maybe throughout history, That is a true thing, that a couple beheadings, Rome used to behead people and make an example. Obviously, the crucifix of Jesus Christ, crucifixions was a way to make an example. And striking that fear in the population is a very real psychological tactic that authoritarians, totalitarian dictators and leaders and kings and stuff have used for a long time. So I understand the sentiment of a young person saying, I am sick of this whole thing. I'm sick of the government. I'm sick of right, left. I'm sick of everything. I can't hold down a job. When I do, I don't get paid. I can't get other jobs. How are we supposed to? I get it. The young people are going through a lot right now. And so it's either, it's at a point where beheading politicians is like a logical thing in their minds, right? It's like, let's behead them. The other side of it is, let's rollerblade in peace, which does not get anything accomplished either, right? So it's like this crazy extreme of, we need some beheadings in America to bring things back in line, and we're going to protest with lights and rollerblades and Pikachu outfits all night. That's the state of America, folks. And so I truly feel for especially the younger generation that are facing just stuff that truly my generation and the generations older, I think, unless you're really tapped in and kind of paying attention to stuff, it's probably hard to relate to this, younger generation, Gen Z, Gen Alpha. Well, Gen Alpha is probably not there yet, but with Gen Z especially, they grew up with the internet, they grew up with social media. It's a different world. Their perceptions are probably skewed in certain ways because of all the scrolling, the doom scrolling. And I want to tie it back to the man who was tripping out on acid in the Burning Man episode, because if you pay attention to what he says, he was trying to figure out how this Christianity, I'm trying to figure out what it means. He was going on this rant, right? But part of this rant, he mentioned something called brain rot. And if you're familiar with culture, it's a term that basically describes mental dulling or intellectual decay, the desensitization of our minds, where we're scrolling, doom scrolling, and we're overstimulated, and we're addicted to media, and we're always freaking out or reacting to the lowest common denominator, the low-hanging fruit, right? We scroll, we see something, I got to comment on this and say things and blah, 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 blah. And it's usually with the lowest type of stuff. It's not content that helps you or brings value. It's just emotional reaction content, right? And so this phrase brain rot became that word or phrase to describe this existential fatigue of being hyper-stimulated with digital media. And so this guy on acid was saying, how do I even deal with this brain rot? And so he's a victim, truly a victim of this generation of being pounced with social media. Back in the day, my generation, when we were growing up, it was one channel. I am so old, folks, that I had a TV with physical buttons you pressed to change channels, and all we had was channel 2, channel 4, channel 5, channel 7, channel 9, channel 11, channel 13. And then channel 18 was for foreign stuff, for the Japanese shows on weekends. Okay, so that's all we had. And we had to push the physical buttons. So, our attention was fairly centralized in that way. It was focused, right? Everyone kind of watched the same thing. Most people were watching late night together, or everyone's watching Saturday Night Live on Saturdays. Or when cable came around, it definitely expanded the roster of channels, but it was still concentrated around a few different channels. You got your ESPN, you had MTV, you had Comedy Central, everyone's watching South Park on Wednesdays. So it was still this centralized, focused type of thing. Now, I mean, in an hour, you can scroll and see thousands of pieces of content and go through all the emotional reactions to each one. And I think it's why younger people feel exhausted and they feel like they've lived a million lives, is because they're literally being bombarded with so much all at once. It's overstimulating. And so again, it makes sense that one's conclusion is either let's behead some people, we need to bring things back into order, or on the other side of the extreme, let's just rollerblade with lights and pretend like we're making a difference, right? So this brings me to a post by the Department of Homeland Security. Now, I have created for the innocent eyes of the youth who watch this stream, and for anybody who does not want to be subject to certain types of images, I did blur out the image that the Department of Homeland Security shared. Now, on one hand, incredibly funny. On the other hand, somewhat troubling that the Department of Homeland Security is posting this. Okay. The DHS, they got the gray check mark. That's how you know it's actual government on X, is they have the gray check mark. So the Department of Homeland Security posted, breaking, Gavin Newsom has shown up to the riot. Of course, we had the No Kings riot over the weekend, where a whole bunch of people were gathering saying, no, we don't want a king, and doing their whole thing. And so, yes, breaking, Gavin Newsom has shown up to the riot. That's the caption. The image is just a few protesters. You got your folk wearing a little bit of face masks or shimmies or something, and bandanas over their face, black hats. There's one gal with red hair and a clown type of makeup. So they're probably liberal type folk, right? Lefty. Some people in animal costumes and stuff. See, it's hard to tell. October is a really targeted time to do this type of protest because you can't tell if people are just kind of in the Halloween spirit, getting dressed up, or if this is just how they're dressing up for protests. But I guess it doesn't matter. We're 24/7, 365, everything nowadays. So the image that I blurred out is a man or woman, I don't know. It might be a woman in there, I don't know. It's somebody in a male phallic costume. Yes, male parts costume. You can imagine what that looks like. And they're holding a sign that reads, "Deport D's male body part." Again, incredibly funny. And incredibly funny that they would invoke Gavin Newsom as part of the joke. But also highly inappropriate to be sharing on the timeline. I'm sorry, but I don't think sharing these ridiculous memes was on the bingo card for me. When the Homeland, the government accounts, the official government accounts sharing this type of image, I suppose I'm not surprised per se. We're sliding down this we're on this descent as Americans and as the West when it comes to decency and all that kind of stuff. Even though we're like, oh, we're in a conservative revolution. Yeah, let's share this picture of a male thing, a person dressed up in a male thing. That's not all, folks. It gets a little bit weirder. Of course, the Trump AI poop thing. We'll get to that in a second. But I do want to mention this because why mention Gavin Newsom? Department of Homeland Security, why are you mentioning Gavin Newsom in this particular post? I get it. It's funny. It's hilarious. But what is it about Gavin Newsom that's on your mind?
It's Newsom science, baby! Ha!
This makes me wonder if the prospect of Gavin Newsom doing something in 2028 is legitimate. And the opposite side of the political aisle are a little bit worried about Gavin Newsom. I don't know. I just don't understand why invoke the name of Gavin Newsom in a post like this if they weren't on their mind, or if he wasn't on their mind. If Gavin Newsom truly was like a nothing burger, so to speak, or a non-factor, then you wouldn't give him the time of day. You wouldn't even need to utter his name. But for the Homeland Department of Homeland Security to post this sort of vulgar, funny meme picture and invoke the name of Gavin Newsom in the process. I don't know. It just makes me wonder, like, what are they afraid of? Why are they afraid of Gavin Newsom? Why do they need to go in on him? But then I also remember that, politics is pretty ridiculous. It's team sports. It's team sports that affects your wallet and the laws that govern the country, basically. That's what it is. So something to keep in mind when it comes to all this, and this absurdity of the Department of Homeland Security sharing this was topped, I would say, trampled over by our president, Donald Trump, posting his meme.
We will launch a new age.
This was shared on Truth Social. It's an AI video. I will play it and I will describe it. There appears to be no sound, but it is the video starts off. It is a military jet, maybe an F-150 or something. I don't know. I don't know military jets, but it's one of these military airplanes. And on the side of the airplane, it says King Trump. King Trump. And it shows it's taking off the runway there. And inside, it shows inside the cockpit, Trump in his flight gear. He's got the mask on. And of course, he's wearing his crown while flying this airplane. And this jet is going through. It's moving. And all of a sudden, oh, look at it. It's dropping something. It looks like thousands and thousands of tons of manure is coming out of the airplane. In 1944, it was Hiroshima and Nagasaki dropping nukes and killing a whole bunch of innocent people along the way to, quote unquote, end the war with Japan in World War II. In 2025, an AI Trump, King Trump AI is dropping poop all over the No Kings protesters. And then it cuts to the protesters on the ground being doused with this brown sludge that falls upon them. And again, folks, it's just there's I myself are going through the emotions. On one hand, extremely funny. I mean, come on, you got to laugh at this just absurdity. This is the president of the United States posting this AI video meme of himself as a king riding on a jet, dropping who knows how much poop all over protesters. So hilarious. But also, this is the president of the United States posting an AI video of himself in a jet dumping poop all over protesters. You know what I mean? Like it's this crazy dichotomy. Only a chaos magician of his ilk can pull this off sufficiently, where you're making some people laugh, and your supporters are laughing, going, "Oh, burn! Burn those libs! Those Dems got nothing! Look at him get covered in poop." And then equally, the other side reacting like, "Oh, it's so absurd that Trump would use AI, post AI videos. This is blah 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 blah." Oh, man, and also get away with it, right? I mean, nobody's going to stop him. Who's gonna be upset? Who's gonna do anything about? Is he gonna get a slap on the wrist? Is he gonna get fined by somebody? No one cares really. And that's kind of the other troubling part of all this. It's like, yeah, okay, we're at this place where our government accounts on major social media platforms like X are posting just the most absurd things in the world, but no one's going to do anything about it because this is just where we're at now. This is just where we are now. We're at this stage of absurdity that only movies were able to document in the past or conjure in the past, but now it's just is what it is. And so, I'm very curious. This is what year? We're still in year one, technically, of the Trump presidency. If he's going to keep upping the meme play, I don't know, how crazy is it going to get? he's got to keep topping himself, and the AI is only going to get better to facilitate this type of stuff. And I'm sure it's just, there's an @ handle here of somebody watermarked on this video. So whoever that is, I'm sure he just made it because it's fun and Trump found it funny and shared it on his Truth Social. So, it's a little bit of a collective effort to create content. And that's just the world we live in now. You don't hire necessarily a team of people to make social media content for you. You just literally just take volunteers who are willing to spend a little bit of time to put something together, because the tools to make things like this are so much easier now. You're a good prompter on Sora or Midway or any of these AI generation tools, and you can put together something fairly quickly. It will only take a couple minutes to put together. And so if you are able to do that and get it in front of the eyes of somebody like the president, if he likes it enough, he will share it, and you will forever go down as the person who made the poop thing. Now, there's a weird underlying thing with this when it comes to the Canarium specifically, and that is because we identified something that people caught on a little bit after the fact, but I think we were one of the first people to truly talk about this.
Hello, I'm the CIA. I love your mass surveillance programs.
I don't think that was the right one. It's this one.
We'll control them with toileting.
There we go. Yeah, so sewer surveillance. During COVID, we identified a couple stories, really hush-hush stories about some foreign companies using the sewer system to detect COVID. And we thought, wow, that's not a good sign. I mean, talk about surveilling the public and talk about something that nobody wants to do. Like nobody's going to fight for waste protection or waste privacy. Hey, that's my waste. I don't want any governments looking into my waste. That's, that is just a kind of a weird thing for people to wrap their heads around. But the National Wastewater Surveillance System is a real thing. They just got another update where they're talking about, tracking some of the wastewater and, looking for infections and different trends within states or regions and monitoring the variants of viruses and all this kind of stuff. It's a real thing. I mean, talk about not having any privacy. Now they say right here, let's do a little thing here. I'm on the cdc.gov website, data privacy and quality criteria. It says wastewater samples contain a mix of DNA and RNA from bacteria, viruses, animals, humans, and other living things. CDC takes multiple steps as part of its wastewater surveillance program to ensure that the privacy of individuals contributing to wastewater is protected. Thanks, CDC. What are those steps? I would like to know what those steps are. How do you maintain or ensure the privacy of individuals if you're in the sewer poking around people's DNA in their poop? CDC's wastewater program monitors infectious disease and does not track or assess human genomic data. Okay, does not assess human genomic data, but does it collect human genomic data? Nice misdirection, CDC. I'm on to you, CDC. Nice little wordplay there. Yeah, we don't assess the data. We don't assess it. Well, do you guys collect it? That would be my next question, CDC. So they got some different levels here. They got the community level data where wastewater is collected from a combined community level sample, not from an individual person or household. Yeah, okay. Okay. As if you can't identify who it is, right? I mean, come on. Population size, all right. Public data display policy. CDC will not publicly display any wastewater detections that could be used in combination with clinical diagnostic testing data to identify an individual. Locations for wastewater treatment plants are approximated. Locations may be also adjusted. It's a lot of excuses, it sounds like to me. It's like, oh, there's all these little inconveniences. So you're fine, guys. Your poop is not completely being monitored. Data from sewer sheds that serve fewer than 3,000 people. This is all places they're collecting stuff from. Data from facility or institution-specific sampling locations. Data from tribal communities. Data from sewer sheds with known data quality issues. Okay, all right. They're collecting your DNA, folks. Data privacy technology. CDC uses the publicly available NCBI human red removal tool to ensure that any potential remaining human DNA is removed. Oh, okay. CDC receives most sequencing data via NCBI, which removes any human DNA sequences before the data is sent to the CDC. Okay, so they have a whole... All right. They have a whole department. Oh, look at that. It's just a GitHub. The NCBI, it's a GitHub account. Hey, look, everybody, we got some software. We got some software. We got some code. It's gonna take out the DNA from the samples before we send it to the CDC. You guys, you're fine, guys. You're fine. When was the last? 3 years ago was the last time they did anything. Okay, they updated the README 3 months ago. Okay, this is like old code. I'm not trusting this code. I don't trust it. SRA human scrubber. SRA also stands for satanic ritual abuse. So, okay. All right, CDC. This is why is it that every time we look into the CDC or like World Health Organization and you just click their links, like the stuff they share in their documents and in their stuff, and it just takes like 1 or 2 clicks and all you find is stuff that just affirms your suspicions about the nefarious activity going on. It doesn't settle my spirit. It doesn't make me feel more comfortable. It just makes it worse. Okay, wastewater contains fragments of genetic material from thousands of people, making it unlikely that any single individual could be identified. Unlikely. Okay, so you're telling me there's a chance. You're telling me there's a chance there, CDC. Every person has their own unique genome or DNA fingerprint. To identify an individual who would need to match, one would need to match the DNA fragments from wastewater to their DNA fingerprint. Although there is a small theoretical chance this could happen, it is highly unlikely. CDC does not have individuals as DNA fingerprints and therefore cannot match DNA fragments found in wastewater with individuals. Okay, sure. CDC will adhere to ethical standards of wastewater science, which of course is a 33-page document. I can't make it up. It's always on point. Everything comes together in that way. I'm sorry. 33. Where's my 33 jingle? Here it is.
33 is the number of completion of the Great War.
I mean, it's also Illuminatus too, but just so happens to be a 33-page PDF document. Can't make it up. So anyway, all this is just I don't know. This is a quick little thing on the CDC and their national wastewater surveillance system, and tying it to the video of Trump airdropping poop all over the protesters in the No Kings protest. I mean, look, I'm not saying there's a connection. I'm saying there has to be. There has to be a connection. The connection that nobody wants to talk about. All right, so there you go. There's a little bit of some of that stuff going on. All right, we're going to jump into some things going on with the mainstream media over the weekend. The mainstream news outlets. Let's see. Are we building back better yet? Why is it this one?
From the ashes of their world, we'll build a better one.
Yes, we're going to build a better world from the ashes of the old one. That leads us to this Guardian article. This is an opinion piece, and I'm reading it because it kind of summarizes some of the things that happened last week. Pete Hegseth's attempt to gag journalism is a resounding failure. Now, I believe Pete Hegseth was also the man that was on the airplane that had to make an unscheduled landing because it was having in-air issues. So yeah, there was that. I think this was happening around the same time, maybe even the same day that some of this stuff was breaking about the media. But here we go. The subtitle here, Hegseth wants journalists to only publish explicitly authorized information. That is not how the free press works. And this is an opinion piece, remember? So, and it's The Guardian, remember? So it's going to have a certain flavor to it. And, it goes into a lot. I'm not going to read some of this because it's, you know how it goes. They do some examples, some storytelling, rather than just reporting when it comes to some of this. They talk about Bowman, who was somebody who wrote for NPR or does write for NPR. And they're kind of pointing out some of the issues with Pete Hegseth's request. It says here, Bowman is one of many Pentagon reporters about to lose official access to the Pentagon rather than accept Defense Chief Pete Hegseth's draconian new policy, which would require reporters to sign an agreement stating they will publish only information, quote, explicitly authorized by the Defense Department, or as Donald Trump's officials now call it, the Department of War. Now, I have not looked into this enough to know if this means like only things that are pertaining to certain subjects or just like anything that gets published by the news. You cannot do it unless the Department of War puts a stamp of approval on it. It would seem that certain things, like certain information about stuff going on geopolitically, you'd maybe want to have some kind of stamp of, hey, this is official, this is not from the Department of War. But also, the part that's funny about this, so what happened was Pete Hegseth makes this whole thing a requirement for the journalists to sign this thing, and a whole bunch of journalists walked out of the White House press room, and as a protest, like, hey, we're not going to do that. We're journalists, which is funny because it was a lot of the mainstreamers. We'll talk about this in this article, but they are propaganda arms. And so it appears to me what Pete Hegseth is doing is like, okay, you guys are already propaganda arms. We just want to ensure that our message has our stamp, like, hey, we said it and you guys have the authorization to make it public as reporters or journalists, kind of like verifying the source type thing. And I can understand that, but I can also understand the other side of it, thinking if you're a sovereign journalist, like, no, why would I sign something that prohibits me from sharing what I think about something or my opinions about something, even though journalists are not necessarily supposed to inject their own thing to it, but of course it happens. Every journalist is an activist these days. In fact, I would argue that we are in a activist world order where everybody in its own way are activists for something. And I wrote about this in my article about how we're all being turned into agents, intelligence agents. But what intelligence are you relaying? And here in the Canarium, me, Gons, I've been preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, Jesus as Lord and Savior, love God, love other people, repent. That's it. I mean, it's pretty much straightforward. The rest of it, of course, the eschatology and end time stuff and all that is surrounding the main thing, which is pointing to Jesus as the only way for true salvation, true transformation of the heart. And that's something that can truly transform the physical world and push back against this satanic evil system that's being built up around us every day. And so I can relate in that regard. But okay, let me continue reading this article because it gets into some other stuff here. But signing would transform reporters, quote, from watchdogs into state functionaries, according to Dan Perry, a former chairman of the Foreign Press Association in Jerusalem and the former Europe-Africa editor of the Associated Press. So again, always with the subtle little deceptions there. Signing this would turn people from watchdogs into state functionaries. When was the last time you thought Associated Press or The Guardian or Reuters or Politico or The Atlantic or Washington Post or all these like legacy media people to be watchdogs. I mean, I just can't think of any time in history where that's been the case. I mean, maybe early on, maybe early days. You know, some journalists served as watchdogs of certain things happening in government, but the last 20 years, especially since Smith-Mundt Modernization Act 2014, when Obama basically made propaganda legal in America to Americans, it's just been an all-out media becoming activists, becoming state functionaries in many different ways. So for Dan Perry, former chairman of the Foreign Associated Press in Jerusalem and former Europe Africa editor of the Associated Press, for him to say this goes to show that he's part of the problem here. He's part of maintaining this false narrative that all these journalists from all these organizations are just watchdogs, because that is certainly not the case. He continues here. Thus, his article is titled, quote, "Why I'm Handing in My Pentagon Press Pass." So again, they're quitting. They're quitting. And I don't know what this means for just in terms of media in general, at least legacy media. Let's continue reading. He is in good company, meaning Dan Perry, who just turned in his press pass. News organizations, including The Guardian, The Associated Press, The New York Times, Reuters, Politico, The Washington Post, The Atlantic, and many others, even right-leaning Newsmax and The Washington Times, are rejecting the demand. Unsurprisingly, One American News, OAN, essentially a propaganda outfit, has agreed to sign. Essentially a propaganda outfit. Again, Guardian, how are you not propaganda? How is Associated Press, New York Times, Reuters, Politico, Washington Post, Atlantic, and many others? How are you guys not propaganda? Even Newsmax and Washington Times, they say, oh, it's conservative and da-da. It's still propaganda. If you are doing media in 2025, you are participating in a level of propaganda. And it's just the facts. It's just the fact. I am standing here online, you know, a handful of you watching and listening, a few thousand people out there. And of course, our reach is not the reach of a New York Times or New York Post or Reuters, but we are platformed, we are public, and we're straightforward about our message. And even our economic model for how we operate. Simple Cody saying sitting, not standing. I'm standing. I'm stood up right here. I'm standing. I always stand up during live shows, so I'm not sitting. I'm not in a chair. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh, so anyway, point being here that everybody has a message these days. And so it's important for you to filter out all the fluff, figure out what content creators are actually promoting truthful information, or at least upfront and honest about what they're promoting. What are they pushing? Do they believe in God at the very least? Are they followers of Christ? Do they reflect the principles of Christ at the very least? Or are they really pushing Christ? Are they producing fruit? These are all things you can do as a consumer of content. You don't have to be beholden to the platforms and what they feed you, the algos. But on the flip side, people are already quitting on these organizations, these big organizations, for any kind of reliable news. So, you know, again, I don't know what's going to happen, if this is a changing of the guard or if this is just a short-lived thing. The problem with so much of this, the big names, they are behemoths in the media industry. And so for them to go down, it really is going to have to be a catastrophic crumbling. And I think the cracks are already being shown, but, you know, it'll be interesting to see if they adapt to some of the cultural, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of the new norms, I suppose, the new cultural norms when it comes to reporting news, or if they're gonna basically die in their legacy suits over time as things change. So something to keep in mind, something to keep track of. The major TV networks, even including the Trump-friendly Fox News, Hegseth's former employer, joined the movement in a joint statement on Tuesday afternoon. Quote, "The policy is without precedent and threatens core journalistic protections," the statement said. Quote, "We will continue to cover the U.S. military as each of our organizations has done for many decades, upholding the principles of a free and independent press." Again, free and independent press has been abused quite a bit, in my opinion. The vast majority is right. This is, again, the opinion piece of this Guardian author. The vast majority is right, and it's heartening to see that near unanimity. The kind of solidarity in the press is powerful, and we can use a lot more of it, given how often journalists are under siege in Trump world. I think journalists have been under siege apart from Trump world, but okay. No matter how much Hegseth and Trump might wish it, journalism is not stenography, and the officially approved story is often only a starting point for deeper reporting that gets at the truth. Perry wrote that the policy was a, quote, "war on truth" that clearly imperils the intent of the First Amendment and undermines the public's right to know what their government is doing. Hegseth responded to this near universal rejection with his usual level of sophistication and maturity. Interesting. Sending bye-bye hand wave emojis as news organizations signaled on social media that they did not intend to comply. Okay. So we got Hegseth waving goodbye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
To these organizations. Now, just a little side note. Spending some time with family over the weekend, started talking about emojis. Apparently, that is not how you pronounce it. It is emoji. Emoji. Because in Japanese, means image, art. And ji means word. So it's art word, emoji. It is not, as Americans think, emotions, because it's, emoji. It's not emoji, it's emoji. Little fun fact for everybody, when you start hearing people say emoji, you can say, no. It's emoji. Emoji. There you go. Now you know. Now you got a piece of knowledge for the dinner table at Thanksgiving. This latest effort amounts to an escalation. Not only does the Pentagon rarely hold press briefings these days, in May, Hegseth banned journalists from most of the Pentagon unless they had an official escort. That was a departure from past practice. In a way, the reporters like NPR's Tom Bowman were able to gather nuanced information during their day-to-day interactions. Under the new policy, reporters could run the risk of being designated a security risk if they even asked Pentagon employees for sensitive information. I feel certain that reporters and their news outlets will continue to cover the doings of the Pentagon, informing the public about what their government is up to. Well, that's the other part of this, is this a move, a precursor move, one of those chess moves where you're not actually taking out anything, but you're putting different pieces into position for something else. I only say that because what is the Pentagon about to do that requires the closest people reporting on the Pentagon to only report things that are approved, the things that have the stamp of approval? It makes me wonder. It just makes me wonder, because I given all the weird alien stuff going on and all these different conversations taking place, high strangeness, I don't know. It just makes me feel a little uncomfortable. It's like, wait, why are they trying to do this? Is it just a matter of, hey, we want to keep or reinstall some kind of integrity for mainstream legacy news outlets, or are they trying to control the message? And I know that's kind of unpopular because currently the conservative right wing have the momentum culturally. So, I think most people on the surface level, they saw a story like this and they're like, yeah, screw the mainstream journalists, they're all fake news anyway, right? And so forget it. But just imagine the uproar if this had happened like this in the Biden administration. If the Secretary of War came out during the Biden era and said, hey, news journalists, you guys have to sign this thing. You can only share stuff that's got the sign, the stamp of approval. Would journalists agree? All these journalists that are protesting and turning in their press passes and stuff, would they comply and agree if it was a Biden presidency? Good question. I think it depends on the organization. I would argue that, I think they would just be like, yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, we're already doing that anyway. We're already sort of showing our side or our bias when it comes to political bias when reporting all this stuff. So, hey, it's even better if we can get the stamp of approval of the government to share this stuff. So, interesting story. We'll watch it as it continues to develop. But it is true that people are getting their news not from these outlets anymore. I mean, we're turning into dinosaurs over here covering some of this. Now, there is an element of the revelation of the method where, the elite folks, the social engineers, they operate under this principle, or it is believed that they operate under this principle that they have to show their plans to the public, whether through fiction or through some event that is manufactured or whatever it may be. The public has to know that this is going to happen or whatever it is, right? A totalitarian lockdown or a virus being unleashed and demands for a certain medical procedure in order to keep your job. All these things were planned out in a sense, but not enough people pay attention and not enough people care before they actually do it. And once they do it, then everyone cares. Now everyone's ready for the crusade to push back against the system. It's too little too late a lot of times, right? I would argue even with the Charlie Kirk situation, might be an unpopular take. It might upset some people. But the people that are now stepping up, and there's a lot of people since the Charlie Kirk assassination that came out and said, hey, now it's time. Now it's time to have your voice be heard. Don't be shy about your faith and speak out and blah, blah, blah. It's like, dude, if this is what it took for you to step out in faith in that way, then maybe your motivation, you got to like recheck your heart. You got to like recheck everything, because that shouldn't matter. That should just be another sort of, I don't know, push, if you will, but it shouldn't be the reason why somebody is, pushing or turning on the system and, hey, we're going to take down the system and all that kind of stuff. That motivation is finicky, because anything built on motivation is ripe for failure in the long term. When it comes to like this podcast, for example, and doing Face Like the Sun since 2011, if you look at the history of my publishing schedule of videos, I mean, what is it? 1,100 videos on YouTube. I think, 180 something episodes of the Canary Cry radio podcast. And now we're looking at approaching 1,000 episodes of Canary Cry News Talk. Trust me when I say there are days where I'm like, I do not want to do this. I'm tired of seeing the news and hearing about the news. But there's this level of grind of like, hey, my convictions are my convictions about not just the world, but ultimately what I think will save people, the gospel of Jesus Christ, Jesus himself, the Holy Spirit, God, freeing us from the wiles of this world spiritually. In the world, we will have tribulation. We're going to have issues. We're going to have trouble. We're going to have challenges. But having that eternal perspective and having that peace that surpasses all understanding and that hope that transcends everything, that's what keeps me going. It's like, okay, gotta strap in. Let's do it. Let's get an episode going, or let's get this video finished, or whatever it may be, right? So my source of motivation, if you will, this push, is not some cultural event. It is rooted in something eternal, something much bigger. And in my concern with these people that are popping up since the Charlie Kirk assassination, and doubling down on pushing back against the system type of folk, is that they're being motivated by something very temporary. It's a temporary motivation. What happens when the whole Charlie Kirk outrage starts to settle down? You have to find another Charlie Kirk kind of situation to stay motivated to keep publishing content. And that's where a lot of the brain rot develops, I think, in our youth culture, in the doom scrolling culture. All that stuff is like, okay, now that we're done with the Charlie, what's next? We need like the next thing that gets our brains all fired up and our dopamine going and our, on fire for stuff. And it's like, yeah, okay, yeah. Why don't you tap into the eternal flame? How about that? Because that will outlast any temporary situation that may get you fired up. I'm not saying don't get fired up. Obviously, clearly there are a lot of people whose convictions were, people were much more bold about their faith post Charlie Kirk assassination. People were speaking up more. They're not afraid to share that kind of stuff. Sure, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing per se, but will it last? Will it change for the better? Is it just outrage? Is there something tangible there? So there's a thing. That's just some opinions there. I don't know if that made sense to anybody, but hopefully it's a perspective that is a little more grounded, and it doesn't, because it's so easy to go with the flow, especially when the winds are in your favor, culturally speaking. Look, as a Christian content creator, right now, there's no better time for me to like double down on all of the faith talking points that push back on the system and the government and all this stuff, which again, we've been kind of doing that for a long time. We have not gotten off that soapbox per se, but as more people hop on, what are their motivations? What is their ultimate message? Because for a lot of folks, we're not going to stop until the system is torn down, until we replace the system, until we fix it. It's like the person I was talking to. Behead some people. It'll get people in line. What is the goal? What is the ultimate goal? Is it just a physical comfort that you want for everybody? Of course, we all want safety and the American mythology, the pursuit of happiness, things like that. Okay, like that. There's a level of, sure, you want privacy, you want protection, you want to be safe, you want a nurturing environment for your children. These are things that are tangible, that are real, that I think we absolutely need to protect and preserve individually, communally, culturally. Yes, protect those things. But if the ultimate goal or the motivation is truly some kind of life comfort, then you might not be fighting for the right thing either. So a lot of thoughts there, and we'll move on a little bit as we go through a couple more stories today. I can go on and on about this, as you know, but I'll end it there for the sake of everybody's ears. I don't want to talk them off quite yet, but I do want to bring this story, which I found very interesting. Wow. SciTech Daily headline: scientists begin $14.2 million project to decode the body's, quote, hidden sixth sense. All right, take a sip of my coffee there. My Cage Rattler coffee. Delicious. And speaking of the CDC, here's another government institution getting into our business. This is the NIH, our lovely NIH that we covered so much during COVID with our favorite guy, Anthony Fauci, who used to head it, as well as, who's the guy who played guitar and sang those songs? I forget his name. Anyway, he was in there too. He's the guy who, Francis, is it Francis? Not Schaefer. I forget his name. Somebody in the chat, remember the name. Anyway, he was the head of NIH. He stepped down. Yeah, mustache guy with the guitar singing about getting a jab and stuff. It's just ridiculous. Yeah, he had white hair. Yes. Francis Collins. Thank you in the chat. Francis Collins, that's him. There, NIH. Yes, an NIH-supported initiative seeks to unravel how the nervous system tracks and regulates the body's internal organs. How does your brain recognize when it's time to take a breath, or your blood pressure has fallen, or when your body is fighting an infection? The key lies in interception, a little-known process through which the I know what it's interoception. Interoception, not interception like in football. A little-known process through which the nervous system constantly monitors and interprets internal signals to keep essential body functions stable. Researchers from Scripps Research and the Allen Institute have been awarded the National Institute of Health's Director's Transformative Research Award. The NIH Director's Transformative Research Award to develop the first comprehensive map or atlas of this internal sensory network. The project will be led by Nobel Prize-winning neuroscientist Ardem Patapoutian in collaboration with Li Yi, the N. Paul Whittier Chair in Chemistry and Chemical Biology at Scripps Research, and Bolzilka Tasik. Sorry, trying to say that one. That one's tough. Director of the Molecular Genetics at the Allen Institute. Jinjin, Xinjin, Jinjin, Associate Professor at Scripps Research, will serve as the co-investigator and head the genomics and cell type identification portion of the project. The initiative is supported by $14.2 million of NIH funding over the next 5 years. Quote, "My team is honored that the NIH is supporting the kind of collaborative science needed to study such a complex system," says Patapoutian, the Presidential Endowed Chair in Neurobiology at Scripps Research. And they go into a little bit more of some of the science here and what they're doing. And so it says here, unlike classic senses such as smell, sight, and hearing, which are external and rely on specialized sensory organs, interoception operates through a network of neural pathways that monitor functions like circulation, digestion, and immune activity. Because these signals come from deep within the body and are often associated or processed outside conscious awareness, interoception is often described as our hidden sixth sense. And so they're creating this map, like a biomap of these things that are operating subconsciously. The brain is, functioning or facilitating different things in the body as part of this, and they're calling it a sixth sense. And the reason why I brought up quantum, you might be wondering, what does this have to do with quantum at all? The reason why I brought up quantum computing and quantum technology is because part of my thesis with Age of Deceit 4, which I published last year, was that as we go into quantum computing, and instead of bits with ones and zeros, we're going to be operating, because ones and zeros, it's either one or the other. The way the computation works is you're either flipping 1 or 0. Instead of that, we're going to have qubits, which is infinite in possibility, right? If you know anything about quantum, you have these photons that are infinite in possibility. It's not just a positive, negative charge. You don't know. It's infinite, and you can tap into that infinitum. So in that way, I argue that as time goes on, we are going to quote unquote discover patterns in all of creation, especially our biology. We're going to find quote unquote quantum algorithms that run our body. And they may not call it quantum algorithms, but that's essentially what they would be, because they're like non-physical cues. And maybe they're chemical, biochemical at first when they discover things, but as time goes on, they will start saying like, hey, there's sort of this non-physical thing that underlies all biology. And that's going to be the sort of fundamental equation for existence of life. And that's what I think this is moving towards, is this notion that we have. It's the same way I was teaching my children, my 4 and 8-year-old. I was teaching them about the Fibonacci sequence, the design, the Fibonacci, pattern, because I was explaining to them, God created everything in creation. Actually, the question my 8-year-old asks was, does everything have a pattern? And I said, well, sort of. There's obvious visible patterns, but everything in creation seems to have some kind of pattern that God, created things with. And I was explaining the Fibonacci sequence and how you can see the Fibonacci in all kinds of things in nature, like flowers and trees and snails and, even your body or leaves or, roots. It's just everywhere. And I said, that seems to be a pattern of creation that's part of God's design of creation. And so I was explaining that. But as I was explaining it, I said, I was saying this guy Fibonacci, they named it after this guy named Fibonacci. And my 4-year-old said, so is Fibonacci God? And I said, no. This guy named Fibonacci identified this pattern and they named it after him. The pattern was there. God created this pattern, but this guy named Fibonacci found it, quote unquote, and so they named it after him, Fibonacci. And I think something very similar can happen with these quantum algorithms. These are things that already exist. God designed it into all biological beings. Some might even argue that this quantum algorithm that gets discovered is, quote unquote, the breath of life, right? Because it's what will animate us, this non-physical substance, this non-physical operating system that makes human biology function. So that's my projection with some of this stuff. And I think these types of stories here about, the NIH, the National Institute of Health, getting involved with looking for the body's hidden sixth sense is just moving in that direction, because every aspect of our being is being deconstructed with the technology and quantified with the technology and science. And it all ties back to the days of Noah. We're living back in the days of Noah. Why? Because we're playing with the building blocks of creation. And that's exactly what happened prior to the flood. Man, with the help of some watchers and sacred knowledge that was passed down from the watchers, started tinkering with the building blocks of life. And that's what led to the flood of Noah. That's why Noah was tamim, unblemished, and saved from that hard reset, the flood. And Jesus said, as it were in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man. And therefore, here we are, just like it was in the days of Noah. We are messing with the building blocks of creation and life. So there you go. I know everyone's that's listening are probably familiar with most of this, but I like to repeat it because I know we have young listeners, newer listeners, and it's important to reiterate some of these points to them because they might be new. If you're listening and you're younger, like you're in college, you're in high school or something, and it's like the first time hearing some of these ideas, it might seem kind of overwhelming and like, oh my gosh, what are you talking about? So it's important, I think, to continue to revisit it, especially in the context of these news stories that are coming out that, most people are not going to relate to the Bible. But pretty much my whole existence in faith, ever since I was baptized, I have looked at every world situation, event, news, whatever. I have always put it up against Scripture, and it's been my way to understand the world. And to me, it makes a whole lot of sense, and it also takes the pressure off of our own ability or inability to do anything about any of this, right? It's kind of like, okay, well, if this is still under the sovereignty of God, and also God laid out these patterns in the past, right? Same type of behavior and the consequences of such behavior, whether it's the Tower of Babel, Noah was still alive during that time, or, pre-flood type stuff with the Watchers, the daughters of men, the Nephilim, some weird stuff going on there. Point being, there's nothing new under the sun, and so we can take comfort in knowing that this is not outside of the biblical worldview. And in fact, some of the biblical narratives that have been ignored for centuries actually helps explain all this stuff with much more coherence, logic, soundness, sobriety, clarity than, for me, any other worldview that I've come across. And I didn't grow up a Christian, so I had a lot of different worldviews, a lot of different sets of goggles to put on and try out and test out and look at the world. And, in high school, I remember I was very much into some Buddhist type of philosophy. And of course, my parents are from Japan. They're not like hardcore Buddhists, but they're come from that cultural background when it comes to death and ceremonies for people that have passed on and stuff like that. It's all in the context of a Buddhist temple and everything. So I was exploring it, but the more I read Buddhism, and maybe it's because I grew up in the West, right? But the more I read it, I was like, this is number one, it's illogical on so many fronts. It's kind of nice, wispy, friendly, like pushing love, and but there's not any substance. There's no place to really root yourself in. And I noticed that immediately, and it was kind of like, okay, all right, so we're trying to attain enlightenment. So what is enlightenment? Can we talk to someone that has achieved it? And many people come out and they say they have achieved enlightenment or they're on the path to enlightenment and all this stuff. And it's kind of like, I don't know what you're talking. I don't see a clear example, and there's no guarantees that what is this for? Is this so anyway, I hate to bash on Buddhism. I know there might be some Buddhists listening out there. I'm not bashing on you or anything like that. I'm just saying for me, it did not make any sense, the Buddhist worldview. But I tried to understand it. I tried to see the world through that lens. And again, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But the biblical worldview has. It's locked into place a lot of questions that I've had and provided sound answers that make sense. Of course, the sound stuff that makes sense to me probably doesn't make sense to the majority of the population because they're not looking at it through the biblical lens, and they're not thinking that stories that pop out every day or every week have anything to do with a grandeur, or a bigger plan or agenda, both from the folks who have nefarious plans in mind for humanity, and even above that, a sovereign God who's allowing all this to take place, ultimately to glorify himself and for the good to prevail. So, I have no doubt the good will win out. You think about just physically in the physical world, anytime you have darkness, the light overcomes it. I mean, it's just a matter of fact. In our physical created world, if you have a dark place, the light always outdoes the darkness. There is not a place in the world where the darkness is so thick that it suppresses the light. It's just not possible. So in that same way, I truly believe that the goodness of God, the good that exists, will ultimately prevail over evil and darkness. And I believe that is coded. That is coded in creation, and it's part of the restoration process of God with creation, with man, and all of it. So, that being said, speaking of creation, Got a little story here. A couple of them, actually. Very interesting, as always. It has to do with up there.
Space, 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 space. Wanna go to space?
Yahoo News. And this is from September. You know what's funny is this story, I'm bringing it to you now because a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of like outlets on X and everybody, they're all sharing it all of a sudden. They're all, oh, NASA confirmed it. We have 2 moons, everybody. This is back from September 22nd, but again, people are sharing it now. Meet Earth's new travel buddy. A tiny quasi-moon has been following us for decades. The newly discovered asteroid is expected to tag along on the Earth's path around the sun for another 60 years. And so this quasi-moon is called 2025 PN7. And it says here it was first spotted this summer by scientists at the University of Hawaii. The exact size is difficult to determine, but it's very small, apparently. One estimate puts it at 60 feet across, while others suggest it could be double that. And they're not really moons. They talk about how it's not really a moon. But if you're on X, you're convinced that, oh my goodness, we have a second moon, everybody. It's happened. You know, we always knew that they're building the Death Star, but here's proof. Here's proof. Now we have a Death Star in our skies, and the reports are suggesting from places like Ignite. Let me just share this Ignite post. Earth just got a tiny new buddy. Astronomers discovered a quasi-moon named 2025 PN7. And it says that, let's see, it's not actually orbiting our planet, but it drifts alongside us in a looping path that's kept it nearby for decades and could stick around until 2083. 2083. I will celebrate my 100th birthday. Should I stay alive that long? 2083, I'll be celebrating my 100th birthday and saying goodbye to 2025 PN7. So, you know, it's just one of those stories that it makes me wonder, because this story, actually, there was a story about this a year ago. Now I'm looking at September 2024. Space.com published Earth has caught a second moon, scientists say. So why is it being reported now? Why is it trending on X now that we have this second moon confirmed by NASA? And even more strange is Yahoo, this Yahoo article from September 2025, so just a couple weeks ago, saying that this thing was discovered this summer. Why? This other article from space.com says the second moon was captured on Sunday, September 29th last year. Is it a different one? I guess it's a different one. It's 2024 PT5. But maybe it is the same one. How are we supposed to verify if it's the same one or a different one? Oh, because they said so. But it just makes me wonder, what is going on here? Why are they, first off, reporting the second moon thing? And also, why is it an old story being recycled as if new, with the stamp of approval from NASA? Like, oh, now that NASA approved it, or allegedly approved it, it must be real. Well, it reminds me of Revelation 18, I believe. And of course, you know, when it comes to celestial objects, there are many theories, right? You got it's Revelation 8. And you have your theories about Nibiru, or Planet X, or, you know, there's a whole bunch of different ideas when it comes to this stuff. The ninth planet, or the asteroid. We'll talk about the asteroid in a moment here. The Atlas IA, is that what it's called? The one that's allegedly maybe an alien probe or something like that. So we have all these different theories about what it might be. Biblically speaking, when it comes to celestial objects of this type and it having some kind of impact, I do wonder about the wormwood prophecies. This is in Revelation 8. Third angel sounded his trumpet, and a great star burning like a torch fell from heaven and landed on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. A third of the waters turned bitter like wormwood oil, and many people died from the bitter waters. So that's an example where a celestial object disrupted in a big way the goings on Earth. And of course, we're talking about a second moon. You know, one could argue a lot of the moon prophecies in Joel and Revelation and who else? What other chapters had the maybe Isaiah? I forget all the books that have the star sign prophecies, but there is a common theme about the sun not giving its light, the moon turning to blood, and things of that nature. Could a second celestial object play a role in such a thing? So those are sort of questions you can have when it comes to a celestial object playing a role in some kind of eschatology. And there's a few extra biblical texts that I want to highlight. And again, these are extra biblical. These are not in the Bible. I want to be very clear about that, but they are good for study. You know, get your curiosity going with extra biblical text just to understand some of it. One of it comes from 1 Enoch chapter 80, verses 4 through 8. And it says, "And the moon shall alter her order and not appear at her time. And in those days it shall be seen in the heaven shining more than it shines in the normal order." So interesting. So the book of Enoch has this place where it describes the corruption of the heavenly luminaries in the last days, and the moon having something happen to the moon, being brighter or changing its course. It's some kind of supernatural disruption that happens there, and it could relate to some kind of second moon impact or effect in that way. Another one, the Apocalypse of Baruch 27, verses 1 and 2. "And he said unto me, This is the number of days of tribulation which are to come. And at that time the moon shall cause her light to shine more than that of the sun, and the sun shall be made dark in the evening, and shall not give light." Again, more closer to the Joel prophecy or Revelation prophecy about the sun, moon, star signs. It doesn't really talk about a second moon object, but again, something happens to cause the moon to be brighter than the sun. Fascinating. Here's the one that I found most intriguing. Book of Enoch, chapter 72. It's called the Book of the Luminaries. So this is probably some later work, not necessarily the first Enoch book there, which, it's, again, I don't want to get into all of it now, but the deeper you go, the longer you go into the Book of Enoch, the more esoteric it becomes, and they seem to be later additions by even Gnostics at some point. But just for the sake of this study here, Book of Enoch 72, 37 through 40, "The moon shows herself first on one side, shining on the 13th part of her light, and on the 14th day she completes her light. And on the day she appears, she becomes visible to the earth as two halves." Interesting. So, Book of Enoch, chapter 72, describing this moment when the moon appears as having two halves. And some mystic authors have taken this and said that, this is describing two different moons, a spiritual moon and a physical moon. So a two-moon prophecy is not unfamiliar to the esoteric researchers and mystics throughout history. and some of them being Christian or claiming to be Christian, others not. But it's not a new idea, which again, it makes me wonder why they are pushing this in places like X, where it's an old story, but suddenly everyone's talking about it. Everyone's talking about how we have a second moon. That's going to stick with us for a few decades and then go away. And this leads me to the other celestial body, the mysterious object that NASA is not necessarily being forthright about, allegedly. This is concerning the comet 3I Atlas. That's what it's called. I said something else earlier. It's called 3I Atlas. And we've covered it. We've covered it for a while. Dr. Avi Loeb of Israel and what was it? Was it Columbia or Yale? I think it was Yale, actually. Or maybe it was Harvard. I forget. It's one of those big schools, Ivy League schools. Harvard or Yale. Maybe it was Harvard. Anyway, he's a physicist and scientist. He's written all these papers about aliens and alien technology and stuff like that. He's out there. But he was on Fox News, and he was talking about 3I Atlas, which was kind of interesting.
And joining us now for more is Harvard astrophysicist Dr. Avi Loeb. It's great to have you back, Dr. Loeb. So at this point, there's worldwide interest in this thing, and NASA still hasn't released the photos. How is that possible?
Well, either NASA is not functional, or there is a reason for that. And it's really...
I would argue, I'm sorry, I'm stopping the clip. I would argue maybe the reason is that none of this space stuff is real. It's all propaganda, and it's all meant to be for control. So they're not going to actually have real photos because, if you got a real photo out there, the public is going to scrutinize it and figure out that this is all nonsense.
Really unfortunate, because that should have been the sharpest image we've got of this object with a pixel resolution of 30 kilometers. It was taken on October 2nd, 2025, and here we are, haven't seen it yet. The best picture we have so far is from the Hubble Space Telescope, 3 times worse in resolution. And what we noticed from the Hubble Space Telescope is there is a glow extending from the object towards the sun. This was confirmed in an image that was released just yesterday from a ground-based telescope. And it's very puzzling because this extension of the object towards the sun is 10 times longer than it is wide.
It's not like nobody is working at NASA because the government has been shut down for the past couple of weeks. So I'm sorry, I don't buy it. Do you think it's suspicious that NASA hasn't made an effort to put these photos out there?
It's strange because the principal investigator of this camera, called HiRISE, on board the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, is not affiliated with NASA. He is at the University of Arizona, and obviously they can still analyze the data and release it scientifically. There is no need for a press release. The European Space Agency already released their data, which was much worse quality, because, that's the way things are in science. You make the data available to other scientists so they can look into it.
Okay, so ESA, what you're saying, ESA, the European Space Agency, they released the images.
ESA, huh? It's named for Jesus for Islam. Interesting.
That we're now showing you, but NASA has not, and NASA's got their hands on the best imagery of whatever this thing is. So, Dr. Loeb, you get the conspiracy theory that's now developing. If this thing is a comet, maybe NASA, or if this thing is an alien spacecraft, maybe NASA is deliberately covering that up by not releasing those photos. You see that, right?
Well, that's one possibility. It's also possible they're not competent, or they don't want to do the work while they are in shutdown. I'm not sure what the actual reason is, but we should be.
It's so interesting that these nightly news, I think this is Fox, if I'm not mistaken, and on Finnerty, to really, as a host of the show, really push the conspiracy theory that NASA's not showing us, therefore they're covering up alien technology. That is the narrative right now with this, because China apparently stopped talking about it publicly, and other, like the European Space Agency and stuff, they stopped talking about it. So everyone's wondering, why has everybody stopped talking about this thing?
Be guided by data, and I very much look forward to them releasing it so we can analyze it, because the previous data was already very anomalous. There are 8 anomalies of this object that we cannot fully understand. And, if it happens not to be a comet, but something else, we should know about it. The White House should know about it.
Yeah, we should all know about it. Has the White House been briefed to your knowledge?
Not that I know of, but I did brief Congress people, and I really hope that President Trump knows everything there is to know about this object.
And just quickly, if it does swing around the sun and starts heading toward Earth, that will confirm that this is intelligent life and intelligently controlled. What do we do then?
We don't have a protocol, and there should be some kind of an organization that looks into interstellar objects of this type, because it's a threat to the future of humanity. It could be a black swan event with a low probability but huge implications, and so far such a threat was not attended to, politically speaking. And I do believe that we should examine all the facts and decide without any assumptions about the nature of this object.
Yeah, and this thing could land on Earth in early 2026. Is that accurate, if it wanted to?
It could, yeah. It could do a maneuver when it's closest to the sun. It could release probes that will visit us. And it's just like some visitor in our backyard that could enter through the front door, and you want to figure out what the intent is. And it's just a matter of curiosity, but also concern about the future of humanity. So I really hope that we will change the way we deal with such interstellar objects in the future.
Okay, some interesting things there. He's talking about policy. We need a protocol or some kind of plan for when objects, could be in our vicinity when it comes to these interstellar objects. I believe there's already some stuff. When I was doing my research for breakaway civilizations, I really dug into a whole bunch of publicly available documents at the time, 10 years ago, of different, space type stuff or some of these interstellar things. I'm trying to nail down some of these. There are papers from like the 80s that discussed what to do with if there was a threat of some kind of celestial body. And I don't know if I can pull it up exactly at this moment, but I believe it was during the Reagan era when some of that conversation was taking place, because they were militarizing space back then, even though they didn't want to, or at least, that's space, quote unquote. They were militarizing stuff up there. And as part of that, the documentation reflected this notion that, okay, if there is some kind of inbound object, we will have a protocol to inform the people that need to be informed. And then, the government and the president and things, they'll have to make a decision about how much they want to tell the public, because it's that age-old tension that they've demonstrated or displayed in movies and TV shows over the years. It's, if we tell the public, they might panic. We might induce mass panic around the world. But if we don't tell them, then, people might get hurt and die when they could have prevented that death or something. So it's that conundrum that government people have to face. What do they do in that situation? But it seems to me that this particular situation, I just, man, it's very tough, because I see all this. To me, it feels, I'm just going to tell you how I feel about it. And this is just a feeling, okay? It feels like the second moon thing, all this stuff. It's all attention for our celestial realm, for policy, number one, more research and more funding for people that are doing the research for that stuff, because commercialization of quote unquote space is basically, it's going to happen very quickly, very soon, especially if quantum computing is going to be done on satellites that are up there. If all the computational power is leaving Earth and it's going to be held up there, then it's going to have to be highly protected. It's going to be highly controlled, managed, watched over, all these things. And that is, it's nothing new. Again, nothing new under the sun. I'm trying to dig in and find some of the papers here. I know that in the 1980s, there was a paper. Well, they had the Star Wars project. It was called Star Wars, culturally. It was the Strategic Defense Initiative, the SDI, that the government put together. And they had the Excalibur satellite that was supposed to be, it was kind of like, it was supposed to be sort of an Iron Dome type thing. At the time, they're like, hey, Russia might send a nuke towards us. We need a system to shoot it down. And so they had different ideas. One of them was the laser rods, the rods from God, where they would drop these tungsten rods from space, and that'll, basically penetrate any kind of underground bunker or anything that's out there. It's crazy. So, and they've had different tests and things of that nature from the early 80s. So again, none of this is new. It just makes me wonder, like, why all this fanfare, and why are mainstream media outlets sitting there peddling conspiracy theories? Why isn't NASA saying anything? Are they hiding something? It's like, man, we've come a long way when it comes to media. Whereas before it was, the news anchor on Fox or whatever, they were the skeptical, or not skeptical, but they were kind of the milquetoast, like there's nothing wrong, support the government, support the institution, support big pharma, they can do no wrong kind of thing. But now it's like you can't be on news without peddling conspiracy theories and tickling people's ears. And Avi Loeb, very interesting fella, very intelligent, but I'm very curious what his ultimate agenda is, other than maybe, because he's the one that's really stirred the pot when it comes to making 3i Atlas a phenomenon that everyone's paying attention to. And it just feels like a Bluebeam setup. It feels like getting ready for a massive celestial event. And maybe they can't build their quantum satellites until after that celestial event. And so they're preparing everybody by, having these types of reports. Of course, at the same time, we're having all this UFO disclosure conversation. There's a new UFO documentary out that features all kinds of government officials, basically talking about UFOs and how real the phenomenon is. Here we go. It's a secret UFO documentary unearths new trailer alongside exclusive stream. Oh, that is not what I was trying to look for. Here we go. People magazine. Viral UFO documentary features dozens of government and military insider. Finally gets a release date. It's called Age of Disclosure. Age of Disclosure. All right. The trailer packed 20 million views. It's supposed to release on November 21st. So there you go. 34 high-ranking members of the U.S. government, military, and intelligence communities shared never-before-released information. So again, the propaganda for this alien UFO type stuff is on high gear right now. In the meantime, you have Avi Loeb coming out from Harvard saying, there's a celestial object. We don't know what it is. It might be a space probe or an alien craft or something like that. Then we got a second moon. Then we got AI of Trump pooping all over protesters. I mean, that's the world we're living in, folks. Here we are, 2025. You can't make it up. Here it is. Disclosure sets out to document a purported 80-year cover-up of the existence of non-human intelligence and secret efforts to reverse engineer technology of non-human origin. So there you go. The age of disclosure. It's not the age of deceit, everybody. It's the age of disclosure now, apparently, according to the Pentagon. Who funded this? Who's the one that funded this documentary? I'm curious. Hold on. I'm going to dig around. I may not get the information right away. Oh, 404 not found. Thank you for hyperlinking stuff, People Magazine, to articles that or pages that don't exist. Great, fantastic. I am grateful for all of the hard work. Here we go. Here's the website, theageofdisclosure.com. About section. Gosh, why is this written like this? The Age of Disclosure is an explosive documentary that reveals an 80-year-old cover-up of non-human intelligent life. Non-human intelligent life. 80-year global cover-up. Listen, folks, the Bible has been saying there is non-human intelligent life since the beginning. Since the beginning of creation, we're non-human intelligent life. And a secret war among major nations to reverse engineer advanced technology of non-human origin, featuring testimony from 34 U.S. government military and intelligence community insiders. The film exposes the profound stakes for the future of humanity. On November 21st, 2025, by the way, just a day before the JFK assassination anniversary, the film will be released in select theaters in New York City, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., and worldwide on Prime Video. Okay. Yeah. Oh, it's got Chuck Schumer in it. It's going to be good. Calling for transparency about the film. What? About what the government knows about you. How is what? This is so written, so weird. About the government UAPs, non-human intelligent life. Okay. Again, who funded this? I'm trying to figure out who funded this film. Who's the sponsor? Who are the producers? We got to find out about the. All right, no, they're not going to tell us. The secret people with the eye. Those are the lizard people are the ones that made this documentary. Apparently, maybe on X there's more clues as to who's behind this thing. Nope, no clues. Is it the Elizondo folk? New trailer. Okay. All right. Well, they're not really giving anything away. I mean, I'm sure somebody can dig it up. I'm not going to be able to do it right this second. But there you go. You got the age of disclosure as opposed to the age of deceit. Apparently, they're going to tell us all about the secret cover-up of non-human intelligences. And at the same time, you got stuff floating up in space, allegedly, that NASA's not telling us about. We got a second moon. We got Trump pooping. We got AI pooping. We got all kinds of stuff going on, folks. All right. I think that's it. Is there anything else that needs to be mentioned today? I don't think so. That's pretty much it. I am going to save all the producers for when Basil returns, just to keep it clean and safe and clean and safe and clean. And but I do want to mention that I appreciate all of you who support the show with your time, talent, treasure. We truly cannot do this without your support. We are truly independent. Like literally, we are very independent. And that is both a blessing and a curse. Nah, I wouldn't say it's a curse per se. It's a blessing because we are not beholden to any corporation, any institution, any individual or groups that want their message to get out there with their stamp of approval. We simply are supported by people who get value out of the podcast. And if you get value, you can give value back. It's very simple and straightforward. And as we move into this Web3 world, things are going to change. Things are going to be strange and unusual, but we're ready for it. I know the people in the Canary are ready for it. They're prepared. Definitely put together meetups in your local community. Get to know folks in your own town, because when SHTF, if you know that acronym, you have a group of people local to you that you can get together with and communicate and help each other out. That's the way to go. It's the way to go. And remember, we are the decentralized, the proto-decentralization people, right? The church. We are truly decentralized because we all stand for one thing, which is Jesus Christ. But we are all over the world, and we have all very different lives and different things we're doing. And I think it's important to acknowledge that other people may be doing other things in other areas for the kingdom of God that we may not even recognize that that's what it's for. We may not recognize the fruit that is being produced by people all around the world, but it's something to keep in mind that we are one body of Christ, but many, many members. So let's reflect that. Let's continue to Share the truth, because the truth will set you free. And it's the only way that we're going to make it through this nonsense. It's the only way to make sense of all this craziness too. So go to canarycry.support to learn more. I do want to mention the coffee. Cage Rattler Coffee. That's what I was trying to say. Cage Rattler Coffee.
Cage Rattler Coffee. Where value for value never tasted so good.
I don't know why I can't find the Cage Rattler Coffee website. Here it is. There we go. Go to cagerattlercoffee.com, get your coffee, and support the podcast all at the same time. It's a great way to take care of your caffeine needs and at the same time support the show. A little portion of the purchase goes to support this podcast. And no, we are not the sellers of this coffee. It is a third party who put together this brand and the coffee, and we simply get support from people who support the coffee. So it's a parallel economy, folks. It's the way to do it. Also, if you have any art, go to canarycry.art, submit your artwork, and we will share it on the show. It's a way to help build the culture behind the community here, and we appreciate all the people who provide free art. Let's see, timestampers and other people who are doing things in the back rooms with your time. We appreciate you so much. We're just grateful. We're grateful to have so many people that are willing to volunteer their time and their talent, really, to help things happen in the podcast or for the podcast here. We're going to, again, the tech team also, shout out to the tech team, the Canary Cry tech team. I know they're building some stuff. I'm just interested to see where they take things and how they develop and what they have planned, because we do need help. We got some serious issues going on with like our website and stuff like that. So we're looking forward to that. Other than that, what else we got? Is there anything else worth mentioning before we call it a day? I don't think so. Let's see. National debt is at 37, almost 38 trillion. That's always good. And text message alert system. Yeah, I was supposed to read some text message. Maybe I'll read a couple. Let me pull it up, see if anybody text message back. If you text the word canary to 877-740-3226, we will send out a text message. Did I send? I did send it. Okay. You'll receive a text message just letting you know that we're live. And it's a great way to stay in touch, because YouTube, Rumble, all these other places may shut us down. It's happened before. It'll probably happen again at some point. So it's just a way to have a due diligence, a way to connect with us even when those other things go down. It's just another avenue to stay in touch. And there you go. Let's see. We got some people sharing some of their swag from the supply drop, it looks like. So that's great. Great. Survey link not working. Oh boy, that's not a good sign. Well, I'm trying to get I don't think the surveys, I had it crossed out for a reason today. I don't think we need to do the survey today per se. I'm reading this text message that's laying out our woes of reporting the proper art that was submitted. 9:07. I will look over the notes here and make sure that things are clean. Thank you for sending it multiple times to us. Let's see. This person, 830, just said, just hit 10,000 followers on TikTok. Congratulations. Is that making you any cash? You know, now that the data center or the database of TikTok went from China to Israel, you know, now maybe we should all jump in, you know. But I will say, I did publish some shorts that I was publishing on the YouTube channel on TikTok, and I got 0 views. like 3 or 4 videos, 0 views. And I was like, what's going on? I don't know what's happening. I don't know if my email is censored or what, but I published them and 0 views, folks. So maybe they don't want me over there on TikTok. Yeah, more people posting the stuff they got in the supply drop. Post that on social media, folks. Post it. Tag at Canary Cry Radio on X and show us. We want to check it out. Other people sending us some Substack articles they've written. Let's see. Caretaker Dan messaging us. Okay. A lot of stuff here. Appreciate all the messages coming in, all the memes. It's always fun. So again, text Canary to 877-740-3226 and get plugged in. It's another way to do so. All righty. Anything else that I need to mention before we wrap today? I don't think so. Okie dokie. Tomorrow is Basil's birthday. And I don't know when he's returning. I think it's later this week. But if you'd like to leave a happy birthday message to Basil, you can do so at canarycrynewstalk.com. Go look for the little green tab on the right side or the bottom. It'll give you a little pop-up that allows you to record a message. And you can record a birthday message for Basil, and maybe we'll play it for him when he gets back so that he can feel loved even though he is gone. And now that he's a year older. So there you go. It's another thing you can do. And what else? Share the show. Share the show, folks. It's the only way people will learn about it is if you share the podcast with others who need to hear it. What you can do is go up to them, grab them by the cage, and shake them.
The end of the world occurred pretty much as we had predicted.
I want to shake things up, stir up some controversy, rattle a few cages. Hey, stop that! You'll never silence me. I'm the last angry man, a crusader for the little guy. Leave the bird alone. Never. Rattle a few cages. Rattle a few cages.
The human race will have every opportunity to improve.
And if they don't?
Ask Noah.
Ask Noah. Go look at Genesis 6. That'll tell you everything you need to know. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for another fantastic day or fantastic episode. We're almost at 888. So if you would like to be a knight or a dame with a little bit of a discount, you can do so by supporting the podcast with $888. And you shall be an Insta-Knight or Insta-Dame. And I think Basil will be back by then. That should be, what is that? So it might be next week. Wow. 888 might be next week, folks. Before the end of October, we might hit episode 888. So if you'd like to do that, you can do that. Otherwise, appreciate you all. Appreciate the support. Appreciate the prayers. God bless everybody. And I will see you on Wednesday. God bless.
I've ordered more pills than anyone in the world.
Toilets! Toilets!
Remember, reality is an illusion. The universe is a hologram. Buy gold. Buy!
Like, subscribe, bell button, all. Like, subscribe, bell button, all.
I cry to the Lord with my voice. With my voice, and supplication. I poured out my complaint before him. I showed before him my trouble, my spirit was. Snare for me. I looked on my right hand and beheld that there was no man that would know me. Refuge failed me. No one cared for my soul. I cried unto thee, O Lord. I said, Thou art my refuge and my portion, in the land of the living. Tend unto my cry for I am grown weary, Lord. Deliver me from my persecutors, for they are stronger than I. Bring my soul out of prison, that I may praise Thy name. Righteous shall compass me about, for Thou shalt deal bountifully with me.
Behold, there was thunder and lightning upon the whole earth, and all the foundations began to shake. The first angel blew his trumpet, and there came hail and fire mixed with blood. It was thrown upon the earth, and a third of the earth was burned. The second angel blew his trumpet, and a great flaming mountain fell to the sea, and a third of the oceans turned to blood. The third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star fell from heaven. It fell on the rivers and on the springs of fresh water. The name of this star is called Wormwood. Therefore, a third of the fresh water became bitter, and many perished from it. When the fourth angel blew his trumpet, a third of the sun was struck, also a third of the moon and a third of the stars, so that a third of their light may be darkened, and a third of the day may be kept from shining. When the fifth angel blew his trumpet, I saw a star fall to the earth, and he was given the key to the bottomless pit. He opened the abyss, and from it came smoke like that of a great furnace. The sky was darkened, and locusts came out from the smoke. They were told not to harm the earth, but only those who did not have the seal of God. In those days, the people will seek death, and they will not find it. They will long to die, but death will flee from them. When the sixth angel blew his trumpet, I heard a voice that said, "Release the 4 angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates." These 4 angels, who had been reserved for this very hour, were released to kill a third of mankind. The rest of mankind still did not give up their idols, nor did they repent of their murders and sorceries. Then I saw another angel descending from heaven. He was wrapped in a cloud with a rainbow over his head. His face was like the sun, and his legs were like pillars of fire. He called out like a roaring lion, and the 7 thunders began to sound. I went to write, but a voice from heaven said to me, "Seal up what the 7 thunders have said, and do not write it down. Now go, take the scroll from the hand of the angel who stands before you." When I came to the angel, he said, "Take it and eat it. It will make your stomach bitter, but in your mouth it will be sweet as honey." So I took the scroll from the hand of the angel, and I ate it. Then they said to me, "Come, you must prophesy further concerning many peoples and nations and kings."
I'll keep you warm and safe in my people's zoo.
He's got the solutions for the problems that he created. So step right up for the great reset. For the great reset. Hiding in the shadows, he's always behind the scenes. He's pulling on the purse strings. He's got control of everything. He's got the solutions to the problems that he created. So step right up for the great reset. For the great reset. He serves his master with fervor. He's a Luciferian. He's bound up and determined to bring us to an end. It's the final solution. Destroy the human race. So walk right up to the great reset. To the great reset. There's only one way out through the door, but you'll need the code. 10, 5, 19, 21, 19. Or you can step right up for the great reset. For the great reset. For the great reset. For the great reset.
Value for
value. We take no money from corporations, commies, or cartels.
Canary cry.